Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 197, cover dated September 1985. So this is a striking cover with Dr. Doom blasting at Colossus there and some of the X-Men down on the ground, Nightcrawler, Cyclops, Wolverine, but all is not as it seems. So long-term readers would remember that the last time Doom appeared in the comic was issues 145 to 47, so almost just a little over 4 years earlier. So is he back for a rematch with the X-Men, or what is going on? Let's open this one up to, well, the cover, I should mention, the cover is by John Romita Jr., inked by Dan Green. And let's open it up to the first page, which takes place in outer space aboard the Imperial Shi'ar yacht in the farthest reaches of the Milky Way galaxy. And the title of the story, To Save Arcade, with question marks after it. And the creative team, Chris Claremont writer, John Romita Jr. and Dan Green artists. What that means is that Romita Jr. is providing breakdown pencils, which Dan Green is finishing in inks. Tom Orzechowski lettering, Glynis Oliver colorist rounds out the creative team. So, anchor image here of Colossus in his armored form breaking into what appears to be a bedroom, and who's there except for Kitty Pryde and Peter Rasputin, aka Colossus. So how could that be? A little bit of a mystery there. And note here the panel borders, this open border that is colored in blue. So something is up here, and then the person arriving in the room transforms. Or sorry, rather the other way around. Peter on the bed transforms into his armored state, but he is punched out through the hull of the yacht, and this Colossus acts to protect Kitty from being sucked out into space as well. So he must be the real McCoy. So he thinks here to himself, fortunately the breach is small and easily plugged by the bed. And then he says, "The danger is past, dear heart. You are safe. I saved you." And that's interesting, of course, because Kitty and Peter have had a breakup in recent months on account of his love affair with the alien Zaji in Secret Wars 1. And so this Kitty Pryde transforms into a young brood queen. So something is not exactly normal in this opening sequence. And this is an interesting panel here, combination of Tom Orzechowski and John Romita Jr., where he's got this really small figure of Colossus in a DeLuca effect, turning and running from the Brood Queen into this, breaking into this other space where there is exactly that alien Zaji there. She was a healer and she sacrificed her life to save Colossus's, and so she's dead in effect. And we've got the little note there to Secret Wars from Anno Nocenti. So what on earth is going on in these opening pages? Well, the mystery continues because Colossus breaks through into another room. That's again an interesting panel design there. The lettering by Orzechowski, and then the tiny inset panel of Colossus careering into another scene. It's the Ust-Ordinsky collective where he grew up in Siberia. And he sees Ileana's little sister in danger of being run over by a runaway tractor. So he acts to save her, but then she turns on him with a demonic face and berates him. "Thanks a lot, bro. If I died then, I'd never have been kidnapped by the demon wizard Belasco and reshaped in his image as his apprentice." And now he's faced off by these three horrifically transformed women. And they castigate him. "We loved you, Peter, as you professed to love us. We trusted you, depended on you. So where were you when we needed you? You failed us, Peter Rasputin." So Colossus there, horrified, and shouts out as he tries to escape them, and he wakes up. It was all a dream. So, and he wakes up in this little comic moment here where he shreds his pajamas, and he says it aloud, "I've transformed to my armored self in my sleep and ruined yet another pair of pajamas." So he sighs there, and then he realizes he's not in his bedroom in the X-Mansion, so where is he? And also Kitty Pryde is there too, and sleeping in another bed, a single bed on the other side of the room. So he says there, "But I must remember, after we broke up, she told me never to call her by that pet name," because he says Katya. "Does she hate me for hurting her so? It seems I certainly hate myself. So then he gets her to wake up. So running through this issue, which, you know, like is spotlit on Colossus and Shadowcat, there is an examination of Peter Rasputin's ongoing guilt for his breakup with Kitty Pryde, and we'll get something of a resolution in relation to all that at the very end of the issue. But who has kidnapped them from the X-Mansion? Well, it's Arcade. So he welcomes them to Murderworld, and that's a nice image of him there with the screen tone as well, shadowing his face under his straw hat there. So then the scene switches, this is interesting too, to Anchorage, Alaska, and this is the marital home of Scott Summers, retired from the X-Men, and Madeline Pryor. And Madeline's pregnant now, and she's looking forward to, you know, like being a family with Scott. But Scott has received a call from the professor, no, not from the professor, rather from Moira McTaggart, and he thinks to himself that she wouldn't have phoned if it wasn't something urgent. It's something to do with Professor Xavier. She sounded worried stiff. So that's on account of the professor having been nearly beaten to death and losing control over his telepathic powers and weakening. He's in a weakened state. And so Cyclops there thinks about how so much has changed since he joined the X-Men back in the original days when Magneto was our deadliest foe, a world-threatening menace. Now he seems to be Professor Xavier's friend and a resident at the mansion. So that's Claremont pointing out how much has changed in the more than 20 years of the publication of the X-Men comic series. So we've got this moment then between Madeline and Scott, where she says to him, where he says, I'll be back quick as I can. And she says, you better be. You know, Scott, you're not just an X-Man anymore. You've taken on other responsibilities. And it isn't a question of choosing between them either. You did that when you said I do. Fair exchange, mister. I sacrificed some of my freedom and independence. My life as a pilot for you. The reverse has to be true for it to make it as a family. So Scott there says it's scary about all of that. And she says to him, no less so for me, my love. Stay well, Scott, and hurry home. I'll be waiting. So a little bit of a conflict there that will get developed also in issue 201 as well, where there is the contention and competition between Storm and Cyclops for leadership of the X-Men, a battle that Cyclops loses, and you can see the review of that issue here on the channel already. And then we switch back to Murderworld and Arcade's breakfast room. So he's sitting down peaceably with Kitty and Colossus, and of course they're concerned, like, what's going on here? Colossus asks the question, what is called the Condemns, he says here, thank you for breakfast, is this perhaps what is called the Condemns' last meal? And Arcade says, maybe, Rusky, if that Hunter's Seeker hits, its warhead may dent even your steel hide. So this missile comes in through the window, whizzes around the table, Miss Locke there running away. Kitty uses her phasing power to disrupt its electronics. Colossus grabs it and it explodes, cradled by him against his chest, so it doesn't do anyone else any damage, but it shreds his costume. That's really great storytelling by Romita Jr. On this page. Also this one as well. And great establishing shots always from Romita Jr. The marital home there in Alaska, the breakfasting room there in Murderworld. So now what we have is Kitty and Colossus getting to the heart of the reason why Arcade has abducted them to Murderworld. So he's going to get to the point, and he explains that where does he get to it? Well, first of all, he brings them into, because Colossus's costume is shredded there, he brings them into this warehouse area where he's got robot models of all of the X-Men, and he says the robots mimic your powers. Pretty darn first-rate job, if I do say myself. You're welcome to use them, be like working with the entire team. So Colossus is putting on the costume there of one of those robots, and Kitty gets to the point here. She doesn't want him stalling anymore. She wants answers, or else. And Arcade says certain clients prefer to exercise their talents and skills against prospective antagonists. My android simulacrums allow me to do that. Fair enough. He's still stalling though. And then he gets more to the point here. He says he saw the missile. Someone's put out a contract on me. So Kitty's all heart in relation to that. And he says, today in Murderworld, I'm to be killed. So again, she says, you're a big boy, Arcade, take care of yourself. And then he finally reveals who the antagonist is, who he's up against, who's put a contract out on him. And he says it's Dr. Doom. So now, this is the reason he's abducted them. He says, I need protection. You're it. Turn me down or fail, and my associate Miss Locke goes after your nearest and dearest. What happens to me happens to them. But Kitty isn't buying it. She says, give me a break, bozo. That trick never works. Colossus is more serious about it and worried. He whispers to her, dare we put our families at risk? But she's really confident that she has Arcade sussed, and she says, he's a con man, Peter. He's into games. The wilder the better. He's got something nasty up his sleeve. I know it. I mean, if he's so all fired scared, why do you only kidnap you and me? And that's a good question. That's a question the reader would have. In his shoes, I'd grab every hero I could get my hands on. Let's play along, Peter, till we find out what he's really up to. Then it'll be our turn. Okay, so we're going to get some games here in Murderworld until we get to the truth of what Arcade is really up to. And then the scene switches to Lower Manhattan, so we've got a little bit of the developing subplot concerning Nimrod, who's come from Rachel Summers' dystopian future to the Manhattan of 1985. And he is lodging with a man whose life he saved, Jaime Rodriguez here. And so they're breakfasting here at a diner. And look at the work that JRJR has done on the interior of this diner, his establishing shot. Lots of detail here. In respect of the short order cook here, the waitress down there at the counter, all the customers, the booths, everything. That is a hell of a lot of work. And it really makes the scene work in this enclosed space. Also, we can see that Nimrod is taking on more humanoid features. He's able to blend in better now. And then, of course, you know, there's a bit of action. So there's an attempted robbery by these two thugs, and they're established there as well nicely at the booth. So they pull out their weapons. They start robbing the customers here. This guy gonna rob this lady of her necklace. And then this idiot pulls his shotgun on Nimrod there. And he says, you come on like a hero, I'll splatter you. So Nimrod basically says, is that so? And then he transforms into his robot sentinel form and he just blasts the two guys away. So he says they're allowed, this unit is empowered to pass judgment and execute sentence. So they are executed and they're basically burning organic mass there. So Jaime asks him, Nimrod, and then he explains, they had weapons. They meant to use them. If I hadn't acted, one or more of you would have surely have been slain. And Nimrod is becoming like a folk hero of Manhattan as well. So all the customers of the diner are all delighted. They say here, this is classic Claremont as well, you know, with kind of crowd talk. What a guy, yo Nimrod, our kind of guy, you're a hero, man. And meanwhile, the X-Men are now enemies of the people. They're outlaws. And there's graffiti going up all around Manhattan, Die Mutie Die, and anti-X-Men graffiti as well. So this is interesting, grand development of themes going on in the book over the years. And this is a really interesting shot here. My guess is that John Romita Jr. was using photo reference for this. And we're going to get like the specific reference that is happening here. So let's see, this is Colossus asking, this is Manhattan. And then I think this is Kitty Pryde maybe saying, you betcha, circa World War II. Remember that scene in The Godfather? Peter, we're looking at the 3rd Avenue L. And you can see there on the hoarding outside the cinema that the movie that's playing is The Postman Always Rings Twice. But it's the original version. Lana Turner starring in it. So it's not the remake with Jack Nicholson. And look at that for an establishing shot as well of the up top view of the elevated railway. That is really great work by Romita Jr. So you're putting a lot of work into this issue. And so then there's talking there, Kitty saying, we're playing on a wacko's turf by his wacko rules. What else did you expect? I wouldn't be surprised if King Kong came bounding over those rooftops, or Godzilla. So they're ready to expect anything. Arcade pops up there and he says here, the last time you tussled with Doom, he was a robot. Now, this is interesting, and this is part and parcel of maybe what Claremont is up to here. So we get a reference to the last time the X-Men fought Dr. Doom, 145, 147, and Arcade makes the point that Doom, was not the real McCoy, he was a robot. Now, where does that come from? That comes from John Byrne over on Fantastic Four in issue 258 of Fantastic Four. Byrne retconned Doom's appearance in Uncanny X-Men for that Doom to have been a robot and not the true Doom. So Claremont's making reference to that, and he's going to have a little bit of a subtle pop at Byrne in this particular issue. And we'll see what that amounts to, and I'll talk a little bit more about it at the end of my review. So next of all, the game begins. This train comes hurtling down the track. And Colossus says, I do not think this is the Lexington Avenue Express. So it's shooting lasers from the engine. And then the X-Men arrive. So, of course, Arcade has got all these robot versions of the X-Men. They arrive onto the platform. And also these Doom soldiers emerge too. And this is a great piece here. This is a fantastic anchor image and bit of imagination on Romita Jr.'s part, where the train transforms into this kind of, what would you call it? It's like a cross between the walkers in, the Imperial walkers in Star Wars, and also The Empire Strikes Back, and also even RoboCop, but it's a bit early for RoboCop, which is in the future. It's coming down the path at cinemas, but not yet. And then these fighter jets come out as well. So Kitty and Peter have their work cut out for them. So there's great action on these pages. The Doombot there blasting away at Colossus. All the various android X-Men battling these other soldiers here. And Colossus thinking about, worried about Kitty being killed there, but it was just a robot. Now this is a great page. So we've got Romita Jr. using all across the page layouts for these panels, these action panels. We've got Ersatz, Storm and Rogue going up against those fighter jets, those mini fighter jets, taking them out. We've got two Wolverines here on the page. This one getting bested by these Doom soldiers. So they're not as good as the originals. Nightcrawler and Cyclops here, but they get blasted too by this massive Doom machine. And then Colossus decides it's time to deal with this thing. So he tells Kitty to phase so the robot cannot touch her. And then he figures out a way of dealing with the robot. This mechanism is Doom's heaviest weapon, the core element of his assault. If I can deprive him of it. So he's thinking in the heat of the battle, and he manages to do it. He skewers it. And so he reckons he's saved Kitty. So remember his nightmare at the beginning of the issue? This emotional turmoil he's feeling? Well, then he just bursts out with all of his feelings here to Kitty. He says, I saved Kitty as I could not save Zsaji. I never even had a chance to try. I hardly knew her. We were together so short a time, and the only words of our two languages we understood were our own names, yet she touched my soul. I suppose part of what I feel is guilt for surviving. I want to prove myself worthy of her sacrifice. The only way that seems possible is by remaining faithful to her memory. Is that right, or am I dwelling in the past? What deaths are forever, Kitty? Am I truly honouring Zsaji in this way? Or so he really just pours his heart out to her. And he even thinks, he asks her forgiveness because he shouldn't be asking such things of her. And of course not, being his former girlfriend. And then they're interrupted by these fighter jets again, these mini fighter jets. And it seems like Doom is piloting them. Or perhaps this one. And he says, what Doom begins, he does not end until he's won. So Colossus is fed up. He says he's tired of such threats. So he grabs this pipe and he's going to wind up to throw that right at the plane, which he does here, and knocks it right into the roof of this apartment building. And he says he doesn't believe it. All he's done, as usual, is make matters worse, because he's knocked it right into Arcade's control room. So Arcade is up out of his seat and he says, Bucketheads, I had to punch my ticket. That's funny. And you sent him crashing right through my front window. Whose side are you on anyway? So Colossus does his fastball special with Kitty, sending him up there to the top of the building to deal with Doom by any means possible until he arrives. So he leaps up to the top of the building. He arrives just in time to see Doom about to execute Arcade, and it looks like Kitty's down and out, that she's been shot by Doom. So he says here, murderer, or he shouts rather, I shall tear the heart from your ironclad breast. But Kitty was playing her own games all along. This isn't her, it's one of the robots. So she phases out of the floor and uses her power to disrupt Doom's body armor, but it turns out that he was a robot too. So she says here, I love it when a plan comes together. Doom zapped the Kitty X-Bot, thinking it was me, and your entrance, Peter, distracted him for the couple of seconds I needed. So Colossus is taken aback. Were you a robot throughout the battle, he asks? Except for right at the beginning. So she explains everything now, and he just stands there dumbly listening. I figured one of us better stay with Arcade just in case, so I reprogrammed this X-Bot to play my part and snuck back here. There wasn't time to brief you, and I figured you'd be more convincing if you thought one of the bots was really me. Your actions would prove to Doom that I was with you. Then once he'd taken care of me, he wouldn't be expecting any more trouble. So Colossus thinks to himself, what a dunce I was to pour my heart out to a machine. But perhaps this is for the best, and I think it is. So he asks her the clear question, did you enjoy making a fool of me? And she says, that wasn't my intent. But yeah, part of me does and part of me is ashamed. I wanted to see if you still cared and how much. What is the answer, he asks. So young love here, thwarted by circumstances. Do they still have a chance at a relationship together? Well, they're interrupted by Arcade, who's dropping his ash onto the back of Doom's cape. And Kitty says to him, you beat Doom. Do you have to make fun of him? And Arcade says, so there's another twist, another reveal coming. He says, don't get yourself in an uproar, Cat Kitty. This ain't Doom. It's Miss Locke. It's his personal assistant. So it turns out, as Arcade taps a button here and 2 glasses of champagne arrive for him and Miss Locke, that it's his birthday. And every year on his birthday, he gives Miss Locke an opportunity to cash in his chips any way she can. So Kitty's disgusted. You were willing to risk being killed. That's the whole point, honey bun, she says. Otherwise, where's the excitement? Where's the fun? He's a nutcase, yes. Arcade, that's insane. Yeah, ain't it though? He says as he laughs, chortles to himself there. So there we go. That's our denouement, except for one last piece. So this is kind of weird. Arcade drives Kitty and Peter to the gates of the X-Mansion in his sports car, and then he drives off laughing. So now the two basically have a chance to chat because Colossus was quiet in the car on the way there. And Kitty asks him, she says to him, is something bothering you? You were awfully quiet on the drive home. And he replies and says, not really, not any longer. It is something with which I hope I've at last come to terms. So the guilt he was feeling at the opening of the issue in his nightmare, it feels like to him that he's worked through all of that and he's more at ease in himself after their little adventure. So she says to him as she taps him friendly on the shoulder, it happens to the best of us. He says to her, you know, Kitty, you are not so young as you used to be. And she says, happens to the best of us, sport. You ain't anywhere near as old as you like to think so either. Tell me then, he says, could this be the beginning of a beautiful friendship? Maybe, she says. So, the emotional tension between the pair, the repair of their broken relationship, it's happened. So, this is good for the team and for the two characters themselves. But what about Storm from the previous issue? She was shot in the head and left for dead in the Serengeti by Andreas and Andrea von Strucker. And she's alive, it turns out, but vultures have come for her. And she fights them off with her staff. And she shouts aloud, do you wish my life, O Master of Shadows? Then come for me, claim me if you dare. So she's not ready to die. And this is the wind-up for Life Death Part 2 from the Heart of Darkness. So that is the collaboration, the great collaboration between Chris Claremont and Barry Windsor Smith, coming up in the very next issue. There's a review already of that issue on the channel. So I said I'd talk a little bit about maybe what Claremont was up to with all of this business of playing around with Doom and Arcade here. And it could be his subtle but pointed rejoinder to John Byrne's retconning of that encounter between Doom and the X-Men. Now Claremont has an out for anything anyone else, including John Byrne, might do with the X-Men. If he doesn't like it, he can make out that they are Arcade's robots. So it's like a tit for tat from the old collaborators who have had a falling out. And so it's interesting. It's kind of petty on the one hand, but on the other hand, it's kind of comical too. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 197. If you did, please like the video on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.